They say the past never truly stays buried. And tonight, mine walked right through the door. I was at my usual spot in a dimly lit bar, swirling a glass of scotch, enjoying a rare moment of peace. Then I saw her. She strolled toward the jukebox, dropped in a quarter, and selected a song, deliberately. Even after all these years, she was still the most stunning woman I had ever known. She wasn't here by accident. No, this was a message. A reminder of where we stood. Stuck in an unending limbo, bound by a past neither of us could seem to escape. The needle hit the record, and Nazareth's haunting words filled the air. Love hurts, love scars, love wounds, and marks. The lyrics pulled me back, forcing me to relive the day it all began, the day a carefully laid-out plan nearly shattered my marriage. It started on my wedding day. Jody, real name Joe Mandy, had been my world. I met her a year into my teaching career at a friend's party. I wasn't looking for love, but fate had other plans. That night, I stepped in when her date, high on something, got aggressive. After getting him off the property, I called the cops and gave them his car's details. Minutes later, he was in handcuffs, arrested for assaulting an officer and making the dumbest mistake of his life, giving them a fake name, Jody's brother's name. In the midst of that chaos, I offered Jody a ride home. She accepted, but not before smirking. "What about your date?" "Came alone," I admitted. "Too busy drowning in student loans to afford one." She laughed, and just like that, something started. 8 months later, I was asking her father for his blessing to marry her. He didn't hesitate, but not everyone was happy for us. Pat Robertson, the name alone made my stomach turn. Jody's supervisor at the Blue Cross Data Center. She had been at our wedding pretending to celebrate. But I knew from the moment I met her, she hated me. I just didn't know why. It took me years to piece it together. Pat had other plans for Jody. In her eyes, Jody had married the wrong man. The right man, according to her, was her son, Matt, an intelligent but socially awkward programmer. In Pat's twisted mind, my daughter should have been his, not mine. And that's when she decided my marriage had to end. Pat wasn't just bitter. She was dangerous. A woman who had left a trail of destroyed marriages behind her, collecting wealth while her ex-husbands were left broken. She wasn't the type to take no for an answer. Her plan was subtle, insidious. She used her power at work to manipulate Jody's schedule, pushing her into management training, urging her to take extra courses, keeping her too busy for family responsibilities. She believed I'd resist, feel threatened. She expected me to crack under pressure. She underestimated me. I supported my wife's ambitions fully, refusing to play into Pat's game. But that only made her more determined. Now, sitting in that bar, watching Jody across the room, I had one question left to answer. How far would Pat Robertson go to tear us apart? And more importantly, how was I going to stop her? As a teacher, I always urged people to chase their education goals. But my life took a turn when my wife, Jody, got caught up in something far from learning. It all started when Pat Robertson, her boss at the Blue Cross Data Center, introduced mandatory Thursday night meetings for all sectional supervisors. Since most of them were women, their husbands, including me, were left confused and frustrated. 16 families had their routines flipped upside down. Something felt off. The meetings didn't sit right with me, but it wasn't until one frustrated husband decided to investigate that everything unraveled. He asked me to babysit so he could check the meeting himself. When he arrived, the building was locked and empty. No meeting, no employees, nothing. Security got involved, and records showed the women had all been clocking in and out every Thursday night for over a year, yet no one knew where they really were. He recorded the whole conversation, and we sent the evidence to every husband in our informal group. 16 months of lies, exposed in minutes. I turned to my brother-in-law, Bob, a police detective, for advice. At first, he was skeptical, until I played him the recording. His entire demeanor shifted. Something bigger was at play. Bob warned me to keep calm and quiet while he started digging. Weeks later, Bob pulled me aside at a family gathering. "The FBI's involved," he said. "If Jody's mixed up in this, she'll be treated like everyone else." My stomach dropped. Then came the night that changed everything. On my way to pick up my daughters, I got into a bad car accident. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I asked the officer to call Bob and let him know. It was Thursday night. Bob, suspicious, immediately tried to call Jody, straight to voicemail. Without wasting time, he gathered officers and headed to Pat Robertson's house. What they found was jaw-dropping. Pat and her son Matt had turned their basement into a secret data center, skimming microfees from hospital transactions. Over 16 months, they siphoned millions into offshore accounts, all while the Thursday meetings served as cover. But one question haunted Bob. Where was Jody? After questioning employees, Bob learned Jody had been spending her Thursday nights teaching Matt social skills at Pat's request. She'd refused to work overtime when she first sensed something shady, so Pat offered her a fake side job to keep her close and silent. That night, Bob tracked Jody and Matt to a private golf club where they were square dancing in a rented hall. When Jody saw her brother, her face froze. "Robert, what are you doing here?" "I'm arresting your boyfriend," Bob said coldly. "He's joining his mom and 16 of your co-workers in jail." Jody's face twisted. "He's not my boyfriend. I was tutoring him." "Tutors get paid. So do prostitutes," Bob shot back. "Meanwhile, your husband's lying in a hospital bed." Jody's double life, unwilling accomplice or not, was over. "Where have you been every Thursday night for the past 16 months? The officer's body cam caught every word, every breath. "Did you get that?" Robert asked, a subtle nod. "Arrest my sister. Charge her with prostitution." Cuffs clicked around Jody's wrists. Her world cracked wide open. She hadn't lied, not fully. But the truth she withheld had backed Robert into a corner. As she stood waiting for a female officer to escort her, Robert's voice cut through the silence. "Mom, Jody's been arrested." Jody's heart shattered. Robert. And the officer turned their attention to Matt. "She never slept with me," Matt protested. "My mom hired her to teach me how to talk to women. That's all. Because of her, I finally started dating." Robert's face stayed cold. "That might be true, but no one's going to believe it. Not with her record, and not after I found her alone with you. And she admitted on camera she was paid." Matt swallowed hard. "She was helping me to get my mom off my back. But there's something I've never told anyone." A trembling breath. "I'm gay." Robert froze. "The first time I met Jody, I told her. She's been coaching me, helping me break the habits I built to survive my mother's expectations." Robert's jaw clenched. He called off the transport, ordering Jody to be brought back. The charges dissolved, but Matt was booked. Robert drove straight to their mother's house. Silent at first, she asked the only question that mattered. "But how will Arlie react?" Robert exhaled, his voice brittle. "I don't know, Mom. I'm heading to the hospital now to tell him everything. If I were him, I'm not sure I could stay after all this." At the hospital, Robert laid the truth bare. Arlie sat motionless, absorbing it all. "Is there proof Matt's telling the truth? Until I know for sure, how can I trust Jody again?" A familiar melody drifted from a distant speaker. Some fools think of happiness, blissfulness, togetherness, limbo, a suffocating space between truth and lies. I'd been fooled once, never again. Across the room, Jody's eyes met mine, brimming with tears. "I never cheated," she whispered, my jaw locked. "Because you've lied before, I need proof." A month passed in silence, court dates looming. Jody and the kids stayed with her mother. Ironically, the 16 corrupt supervisors were fired, though no charges stuck. Jody, of all people, was promoted, taking the seat Robert once held. The song played on. I know it isn't true. Love is just a lie, made to make you blue. That night, I stood before Jody. I hope Matt's boyfriend steps up to prove you right, I said quietly. Because I'm out of reasons to believe. Tears streaked her face as I walked away. The next day, a man approached me after class. Can we talk privately? His voice shook. It took him an hour to confess. Matt's secret boyfriend. A married man. One of my students' fathers. I should have spoken up sooner. He said, guilt written all over him. But when I heard you needed proof, I knew I couldn't stay silent. I promised to protect his identity, then drove faster than I had in years. One stop, a jewelry store, then her parents' house. Her father's warm smile met me at the door. You don't need to knock here, son. Jody stood in the kitchen, hands trembling as our eyes met. I dropped to one knee, a new ring in my hand. I know we're still married, I said softly. But will you renew our vows? Will you start over with me? Tears of relief, of hope, cascaded. Down her face, she nodded. Some wounds don't heal. Some do, if you dare to believe again.